Hello everyone, today I'm going to be comparing three different headphones from Audio-Technica that are trying to achieve the same kind of goal, which is to be great monitoring or studio headphones for tracking. The first headphone and the cheapest one is going to be the Audio-Technica M20x. It's a $50 close-back headphone. As you can see, build quality is not great, but we're going to get to that. The second headphone is going to be the Audio-Technica M40x, which I haven't fully reviewed before, and the last is going to be the M50x. Now, I'm aware that these are third-party earpads. I've changed these after the review but that's the M50x. Now, the price difference between these headphones is all equal. The M20x starts at $50, the M40x is $100, and the M50x is $150. And for that price gouging and for that price difference, there are many things that you get. Either way, I'm gonna have links to these headphones, by the way, in the description. So if you do decide to buy any of these headphones, I'm gonna have the links down there, and I would appreciate you if ever. Anyway, back to the video. So let us start with the build quality. We're gonna start from the top to the bottom. Now, if we start with the M50x, we can notice that the build quality on the M50x is genuinely incredible. These headphones are made somewhat or mostly out of plastic, but the plastic on them and the engineering and the hinges on them feel incredibly well. They feel very sturdy, and I feel very comfortable dropping these from practically any height, almost any height really, and they should be fine. They also have a removable but proprietary cable that we talked about in other videos. The hinge mechanism makes them very easy to fold like this, which is a thing that the M40x and the M50x can do, but the M20x cannot do. Now, the M50x also have a pretty nice headband, and the leather on the headband right here doesn't go off as easy as the other ones. Now, a thing that I can't demonstrate that well because I've changed the earpads on two of these headphones, the earpad that you're seeing right here belongs to the M50x. The earpad that's on the M40x is actually fake leather and not real leather like the M50x, and it starts to break down at an earlier time. Now for the M40x, the earpads on it don't stay as well as they do on the M50x when it comes to comfort, because they are, first of all, fake leather. They're not really these ones, as I said before. Point is, the M50x is more comfortable to me, but both of these headphones are fairly comfortable for long use cases. But if you're looking for the one with the most comfort, then get the M50x. And if you care most about comfort and build quality, you might as well buy like the third-party earpads that I'm using right here, for example. So I got these off of Temu for about $5, and while they do change the sound somewhat drastically, to be very frank with you, they are really worth it. I mean, the comfort that I'm getting with these, it's just absolutely, it's gorgeous. Anyway, moving on to the M40x, as I was talking about the build quality, see, the hinges on these headphones are much different in design than those of the M50x. They don't have this design that just feels a lot more comfortable, so while these can take a few drops, they can take, I think, actually a fair amount of drops, you still have to be more gentle with these. You can also feel the wobble when I do this, and that wobble I'm facing here is not a thing that I face on the M50x, but for most studio cases and for people who are planning to keep this in a more stationary place, that shouldn't be a problem. Now, moving on to the M20x build quality, this thing sucks when it comes to build quality. I mean, the build quality on these is just, my god, it somewhat feels like an insult to you. I talked about this in the video. It isn't as bad as the Shure SRH240A. That one just kind of screams in your face $5, even though Shure asks for $60 for it. But the thing is, this lightweight design actually has some pros of its own. See, sometimes when I have to record a song and I just have to stay wearing one of these headphones for the longest time, I choose to wear this one, just because the clamping force on it is just really light, and the headphone itself doesn't weigh that much at all. Now, that causes things like this. The wobble is just, it's horrid. And you also can't fold them in whatsoever. As you can also maybe tell, I don't know if this shows on video, but the padding from the inside of the cup right here, it's nowhere near the other two, specifically the M50x. Now, for the price of an M50x, you can get 3 of these, and that is really big and very important, because if you're willing to make a podcast, the $150 price tag of the Audio-Technicas is going to start building up really quickly. Moving on to the sound quality of these headphones. See, all 3 of these headphones go towards a somewhat similar sound profile, but not in a way that they sound similar. Not at all, they do not, for the most part. So as before, let's start from the top to the bottom. Now, the M50x has a very classic, very important, very tried and tested sound profile. And the way that you would describe this as being the most healthy kind of V-shape in a way. See, this headphone has plenty of bass. Not a lot of sub bass, keep that in mind, but a lot of high bass, which is where your voice will be sitting in, and where most of the music's bass, that's not like the really deep thumps, but most of the normal bass is going to be sitting in this range. Now, this can be a little extra for some people, and some people say that this makes it not sound very flat, which admittedly, it isn't that flat. But the mids on it are quite good, and then the top end, the crispy, beautiful, gorgeous top end on these headphones. It is the most wildest one of these, and it has the most amount of detail that you could possibly ask for, and it sometimes can be a little bit sharp for some people, especially using the stock earpads. Things like these could tame it a little bit sometimes, depends on the third-party earpad, but otherwise these have the most exciting, most out in the open, most big and boomy and sort of biggest surround sound kind of sound. Now keep in mind, these headphones are obviously closed back, which means the sound stage on them is not incredible, but it is really good. They have well-tuned drivers and they're really comfortable, and the build quality on them is incredible. So as you'd expect, this for me, for tracking, has a lot of detail. I really enjoy it. I love using this a lot. And for general use case like playing games and listening to music and watching movies, you honestly can't go wrong. Like, these are the best of the bunch. Now, again, the price in mind is a very important factor. The use case of these headphones, while it works beautifully for music and for games, it is meant for tracking, I'm assuming, and sometimes for mixing if you get used to it enough. Going over to the M40x, it is practically an M50x sound profile, but a lot less exciting in many ways. See, the high bass on these headphones is actually flatter. See, the lower bass on it should be technically closer to what's more flat or what's more realistic, and the high bass is again slightly more realistic, that is to say flatter, which means technically it should give you a more realistic sound. Now, that is true, and a lot of people do find that this headphone is flatter, and for that they choose it instead of the M50X when it comes to reproducing the most authentic sound or hearing what you really sound like when you're recording. That is true. Now, the mids on it are fairly similar to that of the M50X, if slightly less exaggerated in a way or another. The top end, though, is where things get slightly less exciting for these headphones. See, when you're going for flatter, you're also going for slightly less exciting, and the top end on these headphones just feels more tamed and more muted in one way or another than the M50X. Now, again, that isn't to say that it's a bad thing, because technically speaking, if you're going to be using these for tracking, these are going to give you a more, again, realistic result. But as for me, when I'm tracking, I want to hear those little nuances in my voice. And as personally, that's just the thing that I like. Some people don't do that. But yeah, as for me, I enjoy tracking with the M50s. And yes, I know I am glazing all over these, but I mean, come on, I love these headphones. But otherwise, not much else is missing from the M40X that the M50X has. When it comes to the sound stage, both of them perform slightly or very similarly in a way or another. But as I said, this has a slightly tamer bass and slightly tamer high end that is sometimes hides some details, but not enough to where you shouldn't hear something that you should have. Now, going over to the M20X sound, this is where things get very different. If those two headphones sounded anything alike, this honestly just does not. And I can't pretend like it does. See, the bass on these headphones is unfortunately fairly lackluster. It is not clean bass. It is not impressive bass, and it is by absolutely no means deep in the low ends. If we're gonna get to about 70, 60, 50 hertz and lower, you're not gonna hear much of those details right here. Now, again, this is specifically a tracking headphone, which means you're not really expected to hear those. Now, when it comes to the top end, before I mention the mids, the top end is also even more muted than the M50X and even more muted than the M40X. Again, that's a thing that I noticed, at least, maybe different to you. Now, this is not inherently, as I said, a bad thing. This can be quite good, because sometimes those top ends can be piercing with very sibilant voices. Some people have really high-pitched voices, or sing really high notes, or record really high instruments, or trumpets, or trombones that just have a little bit too much crispiness, and they want to be able to go all out without having to destroy their ears with the sometimes too much detail that you might be getting. Now, the mids on this, what's interesting is that this is very mid-forward. Now, if you've seen me before, or if you heard what I talked about the mids when it comes to vocals, at least for tracking vocals, is that the mids is where most of the vocals will sit. And so because of that, this headphone ends up being really interesting for tracking, because for a very long time, this has been my go-to headphone. This is also a thing that I didn't mention, but the earpads on these headphones are as plasticky as it gets. I mean, the plastic that's used on the earpads is almost as tough as that of the plastic that's used outside, which is to say really tough, and it's not going to be that comfortable for a while. Now, thank God, these don't have a very high clamping force, which means you will be able to use them for a fair bit of time before it gets too much, but sometimes, especially if you put them on the wrong angle, it's not going to be that good. Also, they do not have a detachable cable, which can be a little concern for some people who might tug it out and have to either replace it or try to fix the cable on their own, which not everyone is able to do that. Now, the conclusion when it comes to the sound quality is that if you want something that is used only, and I mean only for tracking, nothing else, not even games. I mean, yeah, it's going to sound good in games, but I mean, if you're going to spend $50 on a headphone that's for games, buy a gaming headphone. It's going to be more comfortable than this. It is going to be more comfortable than this. This might give you slightly more details, but it's the discomfort that this offers is probably not going to be a great thing. Now, if you do find some really cheap third-party earpads, they might fix it, because all three of these headphones have the same cup size, which is great. Well, almost the same cup size anyway. That'll be great, but it's probably not going to change the fact that they still have a very plasticky build quality and so forth. So for tracking, for podcast, if you're talking to your friends, if you want to buy a bulk of headphones, and if also you're not that concerned about them breaking, or at least you know that they're going to be mostly in a secure place that don't include a lot of traveling, at least not without a case. Speaking of as well, the M50x comes with a pouch. I'm not sure if the M40x comes with a pouch. I'm going to look that up and include the answer right here somewhere. This doesn't come with a pouch. You just get the headphone. That's it. So yeah, if you do want to get a bunch of headphones, this might be great. If you're looking for something that's going to have a pretty flat and, keep in mind, somewhat tame sound for the price, but still have a pretty good detail and be pretty unbloated compared to other headphones, then the M40x is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful option that I think stands out pretty well. Unfortunately for everyone else that is not up to the budget, the M50x is definitely the winner for me. And I understand that this is just really cliche to say. I understand that, I really do. But this headphone has just seriously not let me down once. And I love it, I sincerely do. The build quality is so easy to trust. And I have dropped these headphones more than I have dropped my will to live. It's a very old joke. If you want something for tracking, something that's kind of cheap and affordable, and you don't mind the bad build quality, then you can go for the M20x. You're looking for something as flat as possible with a pretty tame sound signature and inoffensive build quality, then the M40x will do great for you and they will not let you down. Keep in mind, you still have to be fairly gentle with these, but there's such a good middle ground between the M50x and the M20x. They can fold, but they also don't have too much excitement. They're also not too mid-heavy. They also have, as I said, a better build quality. So yeah. But yeah, that's gonna be my review and comparison of these three headphones. I'm gonna have some B-rolls hopefully somewhere, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. It's a slightly different dynamic. It's a slightly different kind of video. I'm using a different camera. Everything's new. I'm trying things out. So again, cut me some slack, trying this out. I hope that you like this video, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope this video helped someone out, and goodbye.